What's going on, everybody? Frank from 5am Ramen, and I am now in Tokyo's Jiyugaoka neighborhood. Jiyugaoka is actually known as a trendy area, a residential neighborhood with actually a lot of fancy French cafes. It has that kind of vibe. And I'm not going for the French cafes, I'm going for ramen, of course, and to a ramen shop with a very interesting backstory. The owner apparently had a dream that he was making a bowl of ramen with his dad. This is his dad that passed away, and basically this ramen is what he made in that dream. It is high-level ramen, beautifully presented here in Jiyugaoka. Can't wait to dive in. Let's go. So, finish the bowl. Here's my wrap-up of Dad's ramen as I walk around residential Jiyugaoka. I grew up not too far from here, and I would hang out a lot in Jiyugaoka, so it's always nice to revisit these areas that remind me of my childhood. And here's my recap of the bowl at Dad's ramen. And they've specialized in niboshi ramen. For those of you that aren't aware, niboshi is basically dried fish, often sardines in ramen, and niboshi ramen often carries a certain smokiness as well as a bitterness. And you got that here, a good amount of smokiness, a fair amount of bitterness, but it didn't hit you over the head in terms of how bitter it was. And some bowls purposely, when it comes to niboshi ramen, try and do that. Not the case here. There was a gentle landing as well. The soy sauce was there basically to clear the way for the niboshi or the dried fish. And with some of that fish flavor that you got with the first sip, a little bit of that bitterness and that smokiness, there was a soft landing because they're also using chicken in the soup. And that chicken really, let's say, rounded out the edges and rounded out those sharper fish flavors. Well-balanced soup. There are fish flavors. If you're not big on fish, you'll definitely be like, oh, this is a fishy bowl. But it's not as fishy as it could be. People would appreciate this. It's a good introduction, let's say. Introduction to niboshi ramen. Noodles were fantastic, thin and firm, and getting to the toppings. They had onions. Basically, they're raw onions to break up some of that bitterness if you wanted to. There was also green spring onions or negi. And then definitely a highlight that stood out were the fatty pieces of pork. The way they were cooked, super soft, clearly been boiled for a long time. And then you had slices of basically roast beef wagyu. So very good cuts of meat and presented in different ways, prepared in different ways. Excellent bowl. And of course, it's a cute story. I think there was something there I was reading on the long explanation sheet about how it was his grandmother's birthday, and on his grandmother's birthday he started to have these dreams about making ramen with his dad. And it's just a sweet story and maybe makes the ramen that much more special in a way when you're eating it. And the owner is clearly a fan of niboshi ramen because he has another ramen shop in Hatanodai, which is basically soupless niboshi ramen, but prepared in an almost Italian style way. I've been there before, it was awesome, and I'm glad that he's got two shops now. And last thing I'll say, I think he comes from the entertainment industry because I walked inside here at Dad's Ramen and saw that he had several photos with some Genojin, or basically celebrities, Tarento, as they call them here in Japan sometimes. And I feel like I read that somewhere before. He came from that world but decided to focus on ramen, and I'm glad he has. I very much enjoy that bowl. And I said lastly, but one more thing. There used to be another ramen shop here at the same exact location that also served niboshi ramen. They were excellent, but they ran into some trouble. I think word on the street was that the owner, the previous owner, was hurling verbal abuse at one of the staff, and this basically made the news and they had to shut down. So if that was the case, I'm glad they're not around. And it's nice to see though that the niboshi ramen lives on through a ramen shop that doesn't verbally abuse its employees and has a sweet story as well. Anyways, that's it for me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this short ramen video here in Jiyugaoka. I'm gonna go grab some coffee at one of these cafes, and I hope to catch you in the next ramen video. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button, and hope to see you in the next ramen video. Thanks again.